You do seem to get a nap with the kids every night, don't you, Annie?
Oh, this is seriously.
You have no idea. It's every night after a stream because it's like 1 o'clock, 1:30 when we go to bed, and so we get very little sleep. The next night, nap time, bedtime for the kids, it's like sleep. It's like a godsend for us.
The leader has just done.
I mean, the smallest one still naps during the day, but I know with our eldest one at this age, we started to drop her nap. But with the youngest one, I'm like, nope, not dropping that nap. I need that nap with her.
There's traffic approaching. Watch your mirrors.
Oh, hello?
Yes, a wee bit. Cedric.
That's good enough. It's good enough.
147, Jay. Stop.
Oh, Nils is having internet problems, so he's going to wait and see if it comes back.
Sorry, Pete.
Okay.
Last week's lesson about finding grip really woke up my speeds.
I'll tell you what it's done for me. It's taught me so much about the Skippy. Just experimenting with that.
Hi Charles, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, son.
Hi, Dad.
I should grab some more fuel so I can stay out while we're doing our lesson plan today.
I'm just trying to drift the Skippy, but I'm not very successful at it.
So this is the next fuel pack, is it?
No,
629.
no, this is our practice lab. This is our skills lab.
Track.
Because we assume everyone knows it well enough, rightly or wrongly. There's Annie coming. Let's race Annie.
Leave me out of it.
I can't get it.
Speed limit.
Wheel in front, Lawrence. Left and right with a wheel.
It understeers. I want the rear to come over, but it...
4.
Yeah.
3.
Hey,
2.
we all want rear,
One.
mate, but we're just not allowed
Box
it,
now.
apparently. Apparently the pink is worth more points than the brown. I don't know what game that is. But... oh, snooker. That oh, you've got dirty minds, you lot. 6 points for the pink.
Is David in
Yeah, for some
Discord?
reason, my wife seems to always go for the blue. Annoying, that one.
No, I know that feeling as well, mate. Called the fridge maneuver.
Certainly fewer points.
Traffic behind. Watch your mirrors.
David Michael Sarrow, are you in Discord at the moment? No, okay. David, please feel free to join us on the Discord RTL comms if you want to.
Well, he needs to, I think.
Cool, thank
He
you.
won't hear anything.
Let us know if you don't have privileges and Larry can sort you out.
In the SNS Discord or the Snail Racing Discord?
Snow racing.
Ah,
so
community
yeah,
crossover.
yeah. If you go to Snail Racing Discord and then there should be a RTL comms and then you should be able to join, but if you can't, just let me know.
5.
Sounds like a very expensive. No, he's not in, so you can't see it. We sorted. There we go. So efficient.
Oh, sorry, Dennis. I'll keep
Talking about it. I actually slowed down because I wanted to play with you a bit.
No, sorry, no. I'm trying. Okay, you should. I wish you could see this. Hi. Hi. There we go. Hi. I'm keeping an eye on Discord on the full screen. I'm keeping an eye on the baby monitor, and I'm trying to keep the car on the road.
It's not even an actual race, Annie. You don't have to do the excuses yet.
I know.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But actually, it's daily evening. She actually works.
Hey, excuse me?
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself.
Yeah,
Did I say that loud?
yeah, you did. You can do your own washing tomorrow.
P6.
I'll just do Andrew Bolton and walk naked for a week.
Paying on gas bill for heating, but it works for me.
Sector 1 is quick.
Oops. That was bad.
The leader has just done a 145.
I'm just gonna check to see if everybody's in Discord, so I'm just gonna shout out your names.
I'll check Annie, it's fine. I'm out. I'll
Oh,
check
you're out.
quickly.
Okay.
I know most people, so let's check. James there. Dennis in. Flappy. Flappy earlier.
Sector 2 time is good.
Jerome. Jerome's in. Annie's in. Bolton's been in. Pete's in. Fred's
Oopsie.
in. Cedric's in.
Yeah.
David Michael. Rogue. Yes, there is.
When Nose minded in, but by seems of it. Well,
This
he's
is
in Discord.
Oh, now the old bloody order changed. That's annoying. Stop doing faster laps, people. Let's look at the entry screen instead. Right. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. There's an empty line there.
It's Knowles, I think. Knowles said he's got internet problems.
So there's 14 there. There's 15 in Discord. So it's okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all in. Good to go. Good to go when
Sector 1 time is
our
good.
coaches are warmed up.
Thank you, David.
No problem, Dennis. I'm still learning this track. Never raced it.
You never raced it.
No. I might have in the MX-5, though. I was only on Mazdas for like 2 days with the controller.
Yeah, Sector 2 time is okay.
Cracking with tracks where I didn't first win. Sorry, Dennis. Alright, I'll drive proper now and see if I do a decent lap. Finish your coffee, Pete.
We're getting there.
Your quickest overall. That lap time was 145.09.
Bloody hell, mate, 145.
Show off.
Sector 1 time's okay.
See, I think Pete Skippy looks like a Ferrari put down. I think he's
Like Vettel's Ferrari this afternoon.
Yeah. That was about that far off there.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Oh, Kevin made it. Good.
You still no hotel, Kevin?
Decreasing. It's now
Oh yes,
1.8.
and I made pop-outs because I've got it shipped over to my phone for a hotspot through my phone in order to make this work.
Good.
You're now 0.7 ahead of P2.
Yes.
Sector 3 is 0.
Are you still in the Premier Inn? Or in the Premier Inn again this time?
144.94.
Oh, yeah, it's still an extended stay.
Just a question. Are they shutting the bars at 10 o'clock as well in the Premier Inn?
I think they're supposed to.
Oh, it's in the US though, right? It's different.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was in the UK, Premier Inn.
No, I'm in a Marriott.
Marriott. We call it a Marriott.
Oh, you do?
It is also Marriott, Cardiff Centre. Cardiff Centre. Oh my god, I've been wanking in there at times.
Where was your pinky?
Drunk for the Americans.
Yeah, sorry, drunk. Yeah,
Sorry, Adrian.
Sorry, Charles, didn't mean to swear in front of me.
gun.
Oh, this is freaking slow. This is unbelievable. Oh.
Talking about me?
No, me.
I'm just playing around at the moment. We're doing laps.
I don't know what we're doing. We're waiting for the coaches. Coaches?
Okay. Serious question, if I
It's
may.
just done a
Yes.
145.34.
And I don't ask them very often because I'm not very serious, but so I'm 3 seconds off the pace. It's a long time since I've been on this track.
Sorry, how many seconds?
That puts you 1.0 seconds quicker than second place. Sector 3 time is fast. Just done 144.37.
I think the words put out or not for speed fast, but you see, I'm never going to get 4 seconds no matter what length. But I actually get decided before the week starts, thinking in the best school in the world, I don't have the skill. I mean, it actually puts me off.
Yeah, Andrew, I think what you're doing though, you're looking at you compared to Pete. Probably not a good comparison.
Or Marcus again, 145 speed, and I'm not calling them, but I'm just saying it's like, geez, I thought I just did an awesome one then, and I look up and I'm 3.5 seconds.
Try not and be disheartened. I think rather than look at, you know, it's like when I was coaching athletics, you know, at Usain Bolt's peak when he was running 9.58. There's no way on this planet any of my athletes could get anywhere near that, right? And they all looked up to him and wanted something to look up to, but what I said to them is beat their own personal best, you know, and that they'll see that they'll be improving. That's the comparison. You want to be better than you were last time, you know.
I'll tell you something, Andrew.
Oh, you know what? I want to change my graphics settings
I
anyway.
used to be like that in the beginning, and then I said I will always be 2 seconds off aliens. That's my target laps. And the past, since we started RaceToLearn, I started ignoring lap times completely. I've turned it off. I don't even watch them. And at the end, I realized actually I'm going a lot quicker because I obsessed about the lap times.
I think
And
you're
then made
probably right
mistakes.
there, Larry, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm
You
the
know,
same way.
It made such a big difference to me when I started ignoring lap times.
Yeah, because hot lapping and racing is 2 different scenarios completely. Nobody goes round in a race at 144.3. You know what I mean? But sometimes I actually, well, I obviously don't race in leagues anymore. I pretty much only get in a car with you guys because I enjoy your company. But it just, I
feel
walk
like
away
you.
thinking I'm fucking mediocre.
I feel like you, Andrew. I feel like you. I can relate because I feel like that. I felt like that in all 4 races this week.
I thought you did pretty good in there, man. To be honest with you, I watched. You know what I mean? But you have more testicles than I did, and you're a lady.
I'm a lady.
You're a lady. You actually got in. You actually went in and did 4 races.
No, seriously. I mean, I felt like that in all 4 races. I mean, some of them was just pure luck that I ended up P7 and wherever the other one was, I can't remember. But I mean, absolutely, I just could not keep pace with those guys.
But I just want to jump in, Annie. And another thing, right, which I found with my obsession with stuff like that is when I go check VRS or I compare it with Pete's lap or whatever, there's usually 1 or 2 corners I need to improve, and that's all. And then I improve them, and after that, it's a 10th per corner, which is just alien control that I don't have, and I accept that. I don't. There's 10 corners, so it's a 10th to 2 tenths per corner that Pete's quicker than me, and that's fine. Once I accept that, I know my lines are correct, and that's the best I am. And that means I'm probably, if I can get to that, then I'm probably above average in lap times.
To be as good as you can be.
Yeah, and that I'm okay with that because I don't have the control Pete and Marcus and Charles have, and if I can get within a 10th or 2 tenths per turn, I will accept that. It's and you'll typically see you make massive mistakes on 1 or 2 turns where you can get closer.
Yeah, think about what I rating actually means. A 1350 I rating is about average. So if you're above that, you're one of the top guys. I see posts on Reddit all the time. It's like, I hit 2000 I rating. Why am I losing? It's because you're going against the top 10% people on the service now. That's why you're losing.
Yeah. I guess my take on that is that never goes away.
Ridiculous, but yeah, I mean, it's not even about I rating because, to be honest, now I don't want to race anymore for real because every time I jump on, I'm fucking seconds off anybody, but only when I'm watching the hot laps, not in the race. In the race, it's all about avoidance, racecraft. I think racecraft, which is what I'm here to learn with you guys, makes up 90% of what a race is. You can avoid, you know, like avoidance, running side by side. Your alien lap times are for hot laps and time trials.
But then again, Andrew, the lap times only start mattering to the second part of the race when the car starts spreading out.
Yeah.
And by that time, somebody has to be a lot quicker than you and to actually catch up with you. So if you do well at the first half of the race, then you're in a good position, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail the session. I'll shut up.
No, that's fine. That's a good topic, man.
Anyway,
I mean,
it is. I'm drinking, you see, so.
So honesty coming out, right? It's like, what the fuck am I doing here?
The whole point is wait till we start getting deep.
Oops.
I mean, the meaning of life is 42, but I'm sorry, I've got an opinion. It's 41.
That's very subjective, though, right?
Oh yeah.
It's only from one book.
So I'd say for me, I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but it is what it is. That feeling hasn't changed for me since the first day, right? So first day I jumped on, I did pretty well in the races, but it's like, people on higher splits are 2 seconds faster than me. I'm never going to be able to do that. It's never going to happen. Absolutely not. And then I got a little bit better. I got up to 2K, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm never going to be as fast as 3K.
Yeah.
Right? And because there was always someone fast, and then I got to 3K, and I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I mean, I can go for top 5 most of the time, but I'm never going to be the guy that can be in podium all the time. Right? And now, you know, I get kind of upset if I'm not near a podium, and I'm still looking at the dudes on like the 2K World Challenge, and and I'm still looking like, where the fuck do they have another half second? I'm never gonna get that, right? So there's always that. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, the only reason I've had these conversations all the time where people started calling me alien. I'm like, no, I'm not. I can list like 20 dudes who are stupid fast compared to me, and I'm never going to get there, right? But you have to remember it's a frame of reference, right? Look at back the very first day you started compared to where you're at right now, and look at you looking forward into where you're at now. You would see what you're doing today and be like, how the hell am I ever going to do that? But it's you, right? It's okay to feel that way. I think that's a little bit of that is healthy, right? Because that's pushing you to continue developing, but also just understand that that's the guys you're looking at feel the same way about the guys ahead of them, right? And the guys behind you feel the same way about you. It's just part of the progression. There's always another bar, that's not a reason to not reach for it. You know, it's just accepting that there's going to be another one after, and it's just how it is, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a nationally competitive fencer in the U.S., and one of the things that actually got to the point of me not enjoying the sport is I was holding myself to an unreasonable standard of guys who were actually winning on the international level. And I was in a club that put people on the Olympic team. So I had that standard being put in my face, and it got to the point that I stopped enjoying it because I was holding myself to a standard I wasn't in a place to actually even beat.
Yeah. Andrew, go back and have a look at Annie's first couple of videos compared to what she's doing now, and you'll see.
Okay, but more importantly, not just the obvious changes in her maturity as a racer, but look at how she's talking about how she feels about it during the race. you know, there's still, it's the same shit. 6 months later, with so much more pace, it's so much more race confidence. They're like, oh, I'm trash. Like, no, the fuck you're not. Like, seriously, look back at where you came from, right? It's a progression, you know. But that does illustrate, like, and I think this is almost universal. In fact, I'd be very suspicious of the person for whom this does not apply. That feeling that, you know, you're just not where you could be, it just never goes away. It's just something you learn to live with, you know. Don't let that rule your you know, your attitude and how much you enjoy the racing. You just, you know, understand that you're always going to have that voice in the back of your head, no matter how accurate it is. It's just a human thing. It's just how it is.
Right, coaches, are we going to start the session? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually putting some heat on the tires. We're not doing the track walkthrough this week. You know, I guess we could probably do just a very, very quick talk as we're going through the rest of it, but I'm not intending to do a corner-by-corner breakdown. And also, I think, you know, this week we'll do some lead follow just to get used to the track, remember the line, get comfortable with spacing again. And then I think I would like to see us break off, kind of get some space on the track and practice some of these drills we're going to go through. And I'm actually going to jump out of my car and I'm going to start floating around and seeing how people are doing. We might pull you into some of the additional coaching channels so we can connect on a more individual basis. So yeah, let me go ahead and do, let's just do one more lap here. Let me get a little bit more heat on the tires, and then, you know, we'll have everyone jump in and I'll start walking through what I'd like to go through today.
So just to clarify, this track is not next week's track.
It is not, no.
That's our Gil's track.
Yeah, in general, if you don't know this track well, learn it. Get comfortable with it, because we will be using this for multiple skills development sessions throughout the program here.
For Cedric, I think you knew, and Rogue, you knew. Basically, what we're going to do now is we're going to jump all into Pete's car and watch what he does, and he's going to talk us through a few things. Just make sure that if you jump into his car, that you go to live. Make sure you live so that you can see what he's doing.
Good deal.
And if you don't know how to do that, give me a shout. I can talk you through it. I'll just do it. I'll just jump in the car and say what I'm doing. So go out of your car into the normal user interface. On the helmet bottom left, click on that. Select Pete bottom left for me, and then go down to the video control keys. There's a double arrow with a line key on the right hand side. Click on that and that will make me live. And now I'm Pete's car, now use spacebar and takes the overlay off.
I'm there, thank you. Appreciate it. Now this one might seem a silly question, but on tracks that you don't really know that you're trying to learn, when you're racing without the the driving line on, how do you determine how much brake you need going into a corner that you don't know?
So my approach to that, I treat it a lot like real life, right? There's two basic approaches there. There's start out too hot and dial it back until you stop wrecking. And there's, you know, start out conservative and start adding pace until you're comfortable with, you know, being able to be consistent. So for me, the first thing I'm doing, I'm going around the track pretty gently. I'm looking for the corner exits, the best line that I want to take. And then I'm working my way backwards. I don't care about braking until the very last thing. The very last thing I'm going to try and dial in is challenging those braking points. To begin with, I'm taking pretty slow laps, you know, parade laps around the track, looking for visual markers, figuring out where about I think the braking point's going to be, and then backing it up a little before that. And just kind of seeing how it works out, how that impacted my exit, and then adjust relative to my visual marker. You know, as we get more comfortable. That's always the last thing I'm doing. That's the last thing I'm worried about. So, okay.
I think that's where I'm messing up. I'm focusing on the brake.
Yeah,
in the beginning
maybe Larry and I could record a session on that, because that's obviously doesn't apply to any kind of a track. I know we've talked about it in some general terms before. So anyway, so for this week, what we're going to be talking about is managing oversteer conditions. Now, right off the bat, you know, there's kind of some interesting unintentional commentary where Larry was speaking about this yesterday. He said, you know, the session would be about recovering from oversteer, which is not what we're going to be doing necessarily. Oversteer can be your friend. Right, so in Skippy in particular, it's a very unique car in the service. As far as I know, it's the only one outside, obviously, of dirt, where it wants a very high slip angle. So it wants to have the rear end tracking out a little bit more than the front end in most cases, right? A little bit more angle between the direction the car is moving and, you know, the corner itself. So this track has a couple of corners that will demonstrate that. Some opportunities for using oversteer to your advantage. Now, I would say when we're talking about worrying about spinning out, worrying about too much understeer, or, you know, looping it is one of the ways you'll hear people talking about it. You know, you brought up that snooker analogy for some other life lessons, right? Well, it's also kind of applicable here. So in snooker, right, if you want to avoid you know, getting yourself in trouble, leaving that open shot, or even hooking yourself, you know, what do you have to do, right? You need to put the cue where you intended to put it. You need to impart the correct amount of control that you wanted, and by definition, you will then not have done the thing you did not want to do. So when it comes to oversteer, if we're using oversteer to our advantage, and we are conscious of how much oversteer we're capable of imparting, how much understeer is absolutely beneficial, and how to induce more or less, then by definition we won't be spinning the car out, right? Because we're choosing how much oversteer we want to actually use for our purposes, and therefore we you know, we won't be surprised by it because we're looking for it. We're actively trying to develop a skill set around using it to our advantage. So I have shared my setup for today. I'd strongly recommend that everyone grabs that. The key parts there for today's drills are the full rear sway bar, or ARB, at 8, and then of course the minimum tire pressures. This is going to allow us to get the maximum amount of oversteer initially on turn-in, and it is also going to make it a little bit touchy on throttle, but allows us to be very precise with how much oversteer we're going to dial in. So go ahead and grab that. Today we're not worrying about lap times at all. We're not necessarily worrying about hitting the exact perfect race line. We're really going to be focusing on understanding when the car's trying to oversteer, or how to induce that oversteer when we would like to. So before we get started on actual drill here, does anybody have any other questions or areas of focus related to dealing with oversteer that you would like to touch on today?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
All right, so we talk about the one thing we've also talked about is when the tires squeal, you lose time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's obviously a balance here. Why would oversteer make it quicker around the lap, around the track than without oversteer?
So I might hand that one off to Marcus. That has to do both with the open differential and the street radial tires that are being used. I don't know, Marcus, you want to jump in there mechanically?
Yeah. I don't agree with that to start with, Larry, that oversteer is quicker, because we talked about it earlier, and neutral is actually the quickest way around. But as Pete said, the slip angle is in the Skippy the most important thing to keep track on. If you oversee the slip angle, you're slowing down the car. It doesn't matter if it's understeer in the front or oversteer in the rear.
Okay.
So the key is to find where the limit for the slip angle is in the Skippy.
So just a quick question on that, Marcus. So when you talk about neutral left, it means that you're within the 8-degree slip angle.
Yes. So you don't have too much understeer, or you don't have too much oversteer.
Fine, I understand that then.
Yeah, the car is balanced on neutral, and it is at the limit of that slip angle. And what Pete was talking about earlier is the hardest part in the Skippy is to get that slip angle in the rear tires, and most people, especially the ones that are new to the Skippy, misunderstood that like a massive oversteer, and that is not what's going on in the car. But you need the same amount of slip angle in the rear as you have in the front, and that puts the car in a bigger angle to the compared to the corner, meaning the rear end is swinging out a little bit more.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
When I went through training, well, back, one of the things they talked about with oversteer for me was not about increasing the speed of the car per se. It was about changing the direction of the car, so that when you were done with the oversteer, the car was pointed in the direction you wanted to be, so that you could get a better out of the corner. That's the way it was explained to me. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it is. And there is different way of doing that, depending on the car and things like that. But we are talking about the Skippy specific now, and the Skippy is a little bit special because it requires quite delicate inputs to be able to do that. Sorry, Pete, go on. Yeah, go on.
Muted himself.
No, I'm listening and learning. You guys can still hear me, right?
I need to hang on when I'm watching you, Pete.
Yeah, we got you, Pete.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I was getting nervous for a minute there. Okay, so yeah, Marcus brings up a good point. I might even be using the wrong terminology there, right? So yeah, when we say oversteer, some people think that full, initial D, ass end hanging out, Eurobeat blaring, full reverse lock, sliding around the corners. That's not really what we're going for. We're trying to absolutely maximize the amount of grip out of the tires, and it so happens that these particular, I think these are what BF Goodrich G-Force tires, which I've had on my street car, have a little bit of what I call squidge in them. They've got a little bit of play. They like to have that little bit extra angle built into them. They handle very well at a decent slip angle. So it's not so much that we're oversteering and drifting, it's that we're maximizing the amount of grip that the tires have on offer, which is why you would never use as much slip angle as you do in Skippy on any other car in the service, because first of all, the rubber is completely different and has different handling characteristics. So that's a good call out. There's a big difference between oversteering in a big drift versus just maximizing the grip in the rear. Okay, any other questions about Oversteer? How to use it mechanically, what's going on? What to be thinking about while you're using it just in general?
Yeah, me. I sometimes cannot catch it.
Yep.
And for some reason in my brain, Larry keeps telling me why, he keeps asking me, why the hell do you do that? And I don't know. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, every time, if I spin out, I turn my wheel left. The rim, the wheel, automatically, my brain tells me, go left.
Well, let me explain that slightly differently. You turn into instead of opening up the car. So, if the rear comes out to the left, she will turn to the right.
Sector 3
I see. Okay.
lap time was at
Fair enough.
1:45.4.
I find myself doing that too.
So what you are saying is you are turning into the corner instead of counter steering.
Sure.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
but I can't get my brain to stop doing that.
But
Okay.
Annie,
It's just-
Annie, you only do it. I can help you there. You only do it once you've realised the car's gone. So it's like a desperation move for you, instinct. It's like, well, I must have turned it the wrong way the first time.
Yeah.
That's what I think you're doing.
One
It's
of the
desperation
I've
when the
used
car's
to,
gone.
one of the ways I've used to learn how to control the Oversteer is basically by setting myself into a rallycross car, because they drift and they go sideways almost all the time.
Yeah.
That forces you to learn it.
I just can't seem to drop that habit of not turning the wheel in the direction that it's supposed to go.
Okay.
So
A good way to learn it is to drive a car that actually does it, and does it on its own, and where it actually is the way to drive the car. And just drive it for a couple of hours, then you will get control of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
even
maybe.
just Dirt Oval teaches you that very well.
Yeah.
She constantly sideways.
Maybe
I
try
used
that.
rallying specifically to learn to control it.
I think that's a similar question to getting used to not steering more when you're understeering, right? I think that's an instinct
3 times okay.
that everybody's got, that, you know, it is not natural to, when you turn the car and the car doesn't turn, to turn less. That is not normal. That's not instinctual. That feels horribly unnatural. I think it's in the same bucket with that. It's just putting together some drills and putting in some seat time to intentionally put yourself in those situations and understand and develop the muscle memory that's involved with the array of responses that you have available to you. And that's one of the things we're going to start talking about today. So, and I think we'll go ahead and start talking about that. So, oh, go ahead if you had another one.
Sorry, no, it's just obviously apart from the wheel, in my little brain, does your pedal input assist with that, or is it purely
Absolutely.
just
Yep.
wheel?
I turn this car with my feet more than anything, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay.
That is the focus. So last week we talked about controlling the front of the car by constantly testing for grip with those just, you know, very small, you know, exceeding what we think the limit of grip is, and seeing if we no longer get any response to find the limit. Well, you can do the same thing with your feet to find the limit of the grip in the rear of the car, right? So you hear that feathering the throttle sometimes in those really fast guys. In this car, it doesn't have as much power, so it's not as tricky. You're not feathering it as much on the exit, but you're doing the same thing. You're testing to see, can it take a little bit more? Do I have to back off? It's just that you're not going to hear that kind of oscillation like you would when you're testing for grip in the front, and you're constantly just kind of like, you know, tick, 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 trying to see if it's can take a little more. You know, on the throttle, you might only test it a few times. You actually heard me just do it there. You know, I got just very gently, just a little tiny bit, maybe a 10% on and off, feeling the rear of the car coming around and inducing exactly as much grip as I wanted. So yeah, short answer, yes. You know, for the most part, I'm using my feet to control the rear of the car, and of course the weight, right? and then in the same way that I'm using my hands to try to make sure that I'm not scrubbing those front tires. And then, of course, the more advanced is learning how to put them together so you can get the exact right balance that you want out of any situation. But yeah, today's focus is on the rear, just like last week's was on the front. Okay, so what we're going to do here, and what I would like to have everyone try, and you know, of course, get some space. We don't need to take too long to go through this. Is Okayama has some great corners for dealing with oversteer and understeer, really, and putting yourself in some positions that are going to be interesting. I'm just trying to figure out how to get around. So what we're going to be doing is in several corners here can be taken without the brake and with lift-off throttle oversteer only. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll give you an idea what that looks like. You'll be a little bit slower, but again, the focus of today is not quick lap times. It's not precise lines. It's to get comfortable with how you can make the car move by different combinations and sequences of wheel input and pedal input. So the first one that's no brake is this corner up here. So I'm not going to touch the brake at all. What I did there to induce that rear rotation is I make sure I turn the wheel first, just a little bit, and then an abrupt lift of the throttle to bring the weight forward. So I'm lightening the rear, taking the pressure off those rear tires, which obviously makes them easier to, you know, kind of slide gently on the pavement. And it's bringing also the weight forward, of course, so that the fronts get a little bit more grip, and that induces a little bit more rotation than I would get had I not, you know, turned the wheel slightly and brought the weight forward. And we're going to do the same thing also after this big right hairpin. This is another one. You don't need to use your brakes here, right? So I'm going to turn in gently, then lift, wait for the car to be pointed in the direction I want, and get back on throttle. Same one with this corner. No brake, wait, back on throttle, right? I'll do that again a few more times, just maybe a little slower, see if I can get the same kind of thing. And I wouldn't worry too much about the rest of the track, you know, just get around it as you can. Here again, big steering input, then lift. Car starts to come around. I'm waiting for it to come around to the amount of rotation that I'd like to get around the corner, then getting back on throttle. Now, initially while you're doing this, I would say gently get back on throttle so you don't upset the car, you get comfortable with it. And as you do get more comfortable, you can start feeding in that throttle a little more aggressively as you are coming up on the apex and exit. So I'm going to go around a little bit slower this time. So again, this turn 2 is one of them, so you can be in second or third. You turn in, then lift, brings the car much closer to apex, and then get back on the throttle, right?
Now, when you're turning the car, now when you start turning the car, are you still on the throttle when you're turning the car and then you're lifting off?
Yeah, so the idea is, because when you lift, the weight of the car is going to come forward, right? And the front tires are going to get some more grip at that specific point in time, at the exact instant you lift. Well, okay, fine, a quarter second after you lift, because it takes a little bit of time for the weight to come forward, but whatever your front wheels are doing at the time you impart that additional grip on them is what the car's going to do. If they're perfectly straight, right, okay, well, you got more traction to do, you know, braking on the front if you want. If they're slightly turned, then okay, you're going to use that extra traction to have the front end bite in and turn a little bit more. And if your rear end's a little bit lighter and the front end suddenly got extra grip and the wheel was turned a little bit, that means the rear end's going to kind of swing out. It's like putting your finger on the nose of the car and then flicking the rear end with your other hand, right? You're going to get a bunch of rotation there. Now the problem is, if you lift and the wheel is straight, then you can no longer use that trick again, right, in that same braking zone, because you would have to bring the weight of the car further back, right? Because you don't have all that speed coming in. So let me do a demonstration. It's a little bit difficult to explain. So, and this is kind of the same idea with trail braking too, right? You're using that, using gentle braking to keep the weight forward, keep the nose down. As soon as you're done with that, you can't do it again in the same corner because you don't have the momentum to use to push the weight forward anymore. Okay, so this time, it's going to be a little bit weird for me. I'm not going to turn the wheel before I lift off, but I'm going to turn in at the same point. Jesus Christ.
That's how I drive, man.
That's how I drive. That's how I drive.
There's the answer then.
And then when my ass starts kicking out, I'm on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. It's not kicking.
Because it feels scary, right? It feels unnatural. It feels like it's dangerous. In the same way that turning the car less when it starts understeering feels fucking insane. Who does that, right? Well, people with good power control do that, right? Exactly. So it's the same thing, and that's what I want to have folks focus on here. Don't worry about being tidy. Don't worry about your lap times. Worry about playing around with the you know, how early can you turn in to induce the rotation you want? How hard do you lift to get that rotation? The more you lift, or the more abruptly you lift, the more the weight comes forward, and the more that rear end is going to get light and slidey, which means, you know, you don't have to lift all the way. If you find that just a little tiny lift is getting the rotation you want, it's fine enough. Get used to just how much steering input can you feed in before you lift, right? Key parts here, make sure again that you're feeding in your steering input before you lift.
How long before, Pete?
What's that?
How long before? Because you just said you did it at the same time, and that can you off track? So are you talking like quarter of a second or millisecond?
There's no hard and fast rule, right? Especially when talking about it in a skills development capacity. That's one of the things you want to play with and see what works for you. So again, I'm turning in, lift, then the car starts coming around, and I'm listening to the front because of the things we talked about last week, and I'm paying attention to the angle of the car versus my direction of travel to figure out how much throttle I want to put in.
Right,
So this is, yeah.
And applying the throttle afterwards will stabilize the car again, right? And that's how you get control of the car again, so you don't overtake.
Right. So, and you'll see this a lot more in. Remember who had mentioned using that angle to point the car the direction you want to do on exit. You see that a lot more in stage rally and rallycross. That's the same kind of idea. Once you've got it roughly where you want it, then you start using the throttle to bring the weight back to those fronts and start launching the car out of the corner. So I'm generally waiting until I'm lined up with apex. Now I'm back on, right? Because as soon as I get back on the gas, the front's going to get light. Okay, well, the front's responsible for turning the car, or at least suggesting to the car how much I would like to turn. So as soon as I make those light, it's going to start understeering a little bit, which is not a problem if the car's already basically pointed the direction I want to go and I'm starting to unwind the wheel anyway. Not an issue, but if I do it too early, that's going to create issues where I'm going to miss the apex.
Gotcha.
So again, we're going to be looking at T2. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is Kevin. I was the one who pointed about changing direction. The other place I see this technique a lot is short track ovals. That's how NASCAR steer off.
So
I
again,
just never thought about doing it in a road car.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so T2, this is the big one, no brakes. Just slow it down if you have to, drop a gear if you have to, do whatever you need to make it around that corner without any brake at all. And keep in mind that if you turn the wheel and then abruptly let off, it's going to rotate, right? Especially if you grab that setup that I provided.
So when you talk about abruptly lift off, is that full throttle or off throttle, or it depends?
I do full throttle. Play with it. See what's different when you do a full throttle versus half throttle. You'll find that it's a difference between. It's similar to braking hard versus just, it's similar to braking 50% versus 25%. You've got a range of modulation that you can choose based on the track and the situation.
Can I ask a really stupid question? Sorry, Marcus, you go.
No, go ahead.
So let's talk about what we were trying to do is get the weight of the car forward and get the rear to rotate. So if I'm full throttle and touch the brake, give me the same effect because the rear won't brake as much as the front.
I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a static there. What was that? So if you're full throttle.
Yeah, full throttle. And then apply the brakes instead of lifting. So because I'm on full throttle, the rear won't brake as much, but the front will it'll get the same effect with a bit of braking in the rear. Would that not do the same thing?
It can be an option. It's a different vehicle dynamic, right? You are still braking the front, right? To an extent. I will occasionally do that. You'll definitely see me do that. In actually, I linked a race last night where I had a really heated, like 8-lap, knockdown, drag-out knife fight with some very skilled drivers. And I would use that overlap of throttle and brake to give me very precise control at a lower speed, right? So we were going, 3 wide through T1 at Interlagos with me in the middle, right? I'm not going for max speed there, I'm going for max control. So I could use that, dynamic brake bias that happens when you use both pedals to make sure that I got the exact right amount of rotation, but it wasn't the fastest way around the corner, right? The fastest way is to maximize the traction. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think a few people caught that. So again, the idea with this one is just retrain your instincts as to when are you actually in danger, and when are you not only in danger, but you've actually got something that you can use to your advantage, right? If the car rotates, quote unquote, too much, but it's going to end up putting you right on the apex, whatever. Right? We don't need to worry about that. So just not freaking out when you start feeling that rear come around, and retrain your instincts to what do I want to do with this oversteer? Is there something useful I can do with it in this situation?
Okay.
Yeah. So
sorry, Marcus. Larry, that's me. Larry.
Okay, it's fine.
Bye.
Before we talk a little bit more about oversteer, and particularly lift-off oversteer, go out, try it on the track, see what's happened with the car, and try to get an understanding for what's going on, and we can talk a little bit more about what is actually going on and how to deal with it.
Okay, sounds good. We've got 1 hour left, so...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then in case we lose folks, the homework for this week, you can find this week's track, for the most part, has quite a lot of opportunity in a lot of corners where you actually don't need to use the brake. If you get comfortable with inducing a precise amount of oversteer, and of course, you're probably going to find yourself in situations where you've got too much. So the lessons that we're looking at today can be applied there. So I would say do these drills that we're looking at today on motorsport as you're doing your practice for this coming week. See if you can figure out which corners can you take at speed with just lifting the brake and rotating the car a little bit more than you might be comfortable with, right? I'll say right away, first sector and final sector, almost all of that can be done with no brake. It's much faster than it looks, or very light brake anyway. So that, and then also, and I think this would be a good one for maybe Marcus to tap him after the session if you're interested. Try this with extreme variations in your anti-roll bar as well, because that's the main reason. Controlling how much the car turns in when I'm bringing the weight forward, either with the brakes or lift-off oversteer, that's the reason that I'm going to choose one rear sway setting over another. The softer rear sway is going to be slower, right? It's going to take longer for that rear end to come around, for the weight to move around, but I'm going to have more grip mid-corner and corner exit, whereas a much stiffer roll bar, which is what I'm running to excuse me, what I'm running today, is going to have that very sharp turn in and be allow me quite a bit of immediate control over making fine adjustments. So get used to what kind of influence that has specifically while doing this kind of a drill. It's a good place to understand what sort of ARB settings might be for you.
I was a little bit hoping that you should not talk about that, because this is not a setup. This is about car control, but yeah, it's somehow helping with that, but it's the way I see it, it's much better to try to get an understanding for your inputs than starting to play around with the setup.
Right. Yeah, I would say run the setup I shared for today, for this session, and then on your own as homework. Try it with some extreme differences in the ARB, but learn how to control it with this 8 ARB and plus 5 SPO, and establish a good baseline, and then start playing around with making those changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Shall we jump the car?
Yep, have at it. I'll be jumping out of the car pretty soon and just floating around. If anyone would like to grab Marcus or and I know I heard Charles, I don't know who else we've got in today. We can jump in a private channel with you or whatever you'd like if you've got some questions or something specific you'd like to work on with relation to dealing with these oversteer conditions.
145.00.
So now it's just us jumping on the track and
yep, get some
testing
space. Get some space. We can do lead follow if anyone's got questions on the lines, or if someone just wants to. I know I heard one person where the track was new. If you would like, if you'd like to follow me around a little bit, get a feel for the line, we can do that. Otherwise, yep, you're released on your own recognizance, and just give us a shout if you'd like us to take a look at something.
I'd love the track tour.
Okay, who is that? David?
Yeah, the comms channels if you want.
Henrik.
Oh, okay, yep. You know what? Let me go ahead and I'm going to jump around to the pits. And then, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and jump into one of the other coaching channels. And anyone who would like to do a bit of a walkthrough, feel free to jump in. And then, of course, heads up to the rest of the folks. We will be going around the track probably a little bit slower. So just, be aware.
Before you go, Pete.
Sure.
Tire temperature, how does that affect this?
Do we have Walter?
Cold tires.
Can we talk about that in a setup session instead? Because
No, I'm talking about cold tires, Marcus, not setup.
Yeah, just for right now, less rotation. Basically, just don't pitch it in as hard for today's sessions.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump over. And said anybody who would like to just go through the track, go ahead and jump into. Let me look at the channels. I'm just gonna go into RTL Coach 1.
Coach 1.
Yeah.
Yep, Coach 1. RTL Coach 1. Okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great.
I'll just see if anyone else wants to jump in. I think David was the other one who this was new for. I don't know if he's going to jump in or not. Let's see. Oh, I don't think so. Okay, so we'll go ahead and if you want to jump back to pits, I'll go ahead and roll up to pit exit.
Yeah, I see you.
Okay. You got about a 20-second get back to Andrew, so it's a good time. Go ahead.
Exit's clear. Stay behind the white line.
Okay, so have you done this track at all, or just new for you and
No.
Skippy? Okay. All right, so I guess we'll just do a little bit of lead follow to begin with. I'm just going to run the racing line at a reduced speed. We'll go around once, and then we'll kind of start talking through some of the visual references and such that I'm using as I'm coming around. If we do get traffic coming through, we will stick to the outside of the track in general.
Copy.
This is a big nasty hairpin up here, so just heads up.
Yeah, I've been in the gravel a few times already. Trying to stick to your 2 tire widths rule
Yep, yeah. I definitely got that drilled into my head whether I wanted to or not. Okay, so we'll try and time it to let Andrew and Charles by before we get into T1 here. Okay, actually, let's go ahead and hug the right. I know I said we'd stay outside, but we're going to let these guys through. We got one more, who's 2 seconds back, and then we'll go. Okay, we'll go ahead and tuck in behind Charles here. Alright, so I'm looking for a braking point here, right where that skid mark starts. That's kind of where I'm starting to get on the brakes, and I'm aiming for that brown grass for the apex. So it's a little bit later apex, as are most of the corners here. You know, we'll go around a couple times just to make sure we've got time to talk through all the corners, but in general, if there's any doubt about how to approach a corner here, it's almost guaranteed to be late apex. For this guy, we're looking at about, you know, halfway between those final two marker boards, and again, late apex second gear, spotting that brown grass. There is a couple of valid lines on exit. I prefer to keep it relatively tight, cover less ground, even though the exit velocity might be very, very, very slightly under. A little bit wider exit. I prefer that inside, but you can push out a little bit further. For this guy, we're looking about halfway between the 100 and the 50, if not a little bit sooner than that. And again, really late apex. This is a huge decreasing radius corner. Pay attention to that camber and how you can use it. And this guy, you know, like I said, you don't even have to use brakes there. The trick for that one is just making sure you're turning in early enough, and again, apexing late enough. These two up here, I'm paying attention to this 50 board. I kind of break in at an angle. Oh, we're going to let them go.
Clear left. Sector 2 is 4.0, off the pace.
And the important part for this one is making sure you can get it far enough left. And guess what? Late apex. Coming around for that one for the exit. This guy can be full throttle. I'm trying to turn in before we get over that hill because the car gets light, which means we're going to lose some efficacy on the front tires. It's going to understeer as you go over that little bit of a bump there. Okay, so coming around again, and try and hit the corners we missed. So T1 again, we're looking for those skid marks, the discoloration on the road. This should be third gear once you're comfortable, and then looking for that discoloration on the inside. I don't track out any more than necessary. And for this one, I'm looking for that right where the grass changed, excuse me, into that little bit of a curve there. That's my turn-in point, right? And again, if we do that properly at speed, that can almost be no brake or very, very gentle brush of the brakes. And that was a little bit wider on entry than I would have liked.
Sector 1 is 1.6 seconds off the pace.
Okay, so again here I'm looking about halfway between the final two marker boards here. And pay really close attention to how this camber works. You can turn in quite a bit later than you would be able to if it was flat, and it will help the car hug the road. And for that one, again, we're looking for that discoloration on the grass on the right for our turn-in point. And here again, really important that you're not apexing too early. You want to make sure that you're at the you know, the last third of that curve on the left. Okay, and this guy is pretty much all about patience, right? That sharp left hairpin. Just making sure you're not getting on the gas too early and pushing yourself wide, because you've got that right hairpin coming up immediately after, so it's way more important to have tracked out than to carry, you know, a crazy amount of exit speed.
That one needs brake.
Definitely missed that last one.
So again, at the track marks there, hit the grass, and I'll pay attention to the right hand side right before this like lime green curb. that's my turn-in point, right? And I'm aiming for it. There's these trees straight ahead of me right now. I'm looking at those to understand where the actual apex is, and pretty much as soon as those are dead ahead of me, lined up with the front of the car, I know I'm pretty much at the apex, and I can start thinking about departing the curb. Which is that's a nice visual marker to use because it's, you know, it stands out above traffic and gives you a good point of reference because that's a big old long curb. Also really important for that T2 is to pay attention to the camber. If you get any more than a couple car widths away from the curb, the camber starts to really fall away. You don't want to get stuck out there. And if you do, just be aware that you're going to get understeer because the track isn't holding you onto the inside of the corner anymore. So the car is going to work different.
It's really, I just tried lifting to get that oversteer, but I just get right back on the gas. So,
it takes a little while to get used to the timing, you know, and of course you need to be carrying enough speed.
Yeah.
So I think we'll go around one more time and then we can switch.
Turn before the hill, right?
Yes, yep. Because once you go over the hill, you know, I mean, if you've ever gone over some railroad tracks that were raised or anything, you know what it feels like when the car gets light? If you were to turn the wheel then, nothing would happen, right? Because the car's not pushing against the road hard enough. Okay, so again, we're eyeballing that this colored grass here. Now I'm looking at this green curbing on the right to get my turn-in point, spotting the trees to find my apex and track out point, making as straight of a line as I can through these twisties, and then braking halfway between the last two marker boards, making sure I'm getting down to second and I'm patient, not getting on the gas too early. And again, I like to hold it tight here, but it's not mandatory. It's not wrong if you prefer to track out a little bit. But I do try to...
not getting on the gas early, is that to avoid tracking out too far?
Yeah, it's to avoid pushing the car out further, and then you may have too much speed to be able to hold your exit speed, right? If you push the car out too far, well, now you're at risk of going off the track, right? So you've got to lift, and now you've just killed your exit.
I don't remember the break point for this one.
It's a little bit after we're at the last marker board.
That was why.
Again, I'm turning in before the hill, trying to put my wheels on that curb. And again, this final one's another late apex. I'm very focused on the exit and make sure that I can track the car all the way out. So why don't you go ahead, and I'll take a look and see how we're doing.
Try.
Yeah, just focus on precision. Don't worry about being fast. Just try to hit the line as accurately as you can, whatever pace you need to do in order to do that.
2.5 seconds off the pace.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Sector 1 is 1.7 seconds off the pace. Okay, Pete. 5 minutes of fuel remaining. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yep, so slow that down. Prioritize being able to hit that line. Much, much more important than pace.
Constant feeling is just, I want to gun it, get ahead.
Yep. You know, a lot of racecraft I found, we talked about it earlier, is deprogramming instincts that just about every human being has baked in, and getting ahead of yourself from your most natural intuitive reaction and rewiring those a bit. And I'll be honest, it saved me in real life, like literally saved me in real life a few times, rewiring those instincts a bit. But I had them just the same as anyone else.
Sector 3 is
I've had that happen to me on a motorbike.
Sure.
I did a lot of dirt track.
Yep.
And just in very slippery conditions, I managed to save stop myself from crashing.
Yeah, just simple things like, getting used to not panic braking, right? When the car starts to get a little squirrely, like don't immediately lift off the gas, and certainly don't slam on the brake, which is everybody's natural reaction, right? A lot of this is similar. It's just, the car starts getting away from you in real life, oversteering, you want to stop the oversteer immediately, right? Whereas if you live in like a region that gets a lot of snow and ice, maybe you don't. Like, maybe that's a really bad idea, right? You want to be able to make a conscious choice. Okay, so remember, people are going to be working on oversteer here, so expect some strangeness.
Sector 2 is 1.3
making
the pace.
Okay, so one thing I'm noticing overall, on some of your turn-ins, a fair bit of your apexes and most of your exits, you are leaving a lot of space on track. So try and make sure that you're really getting close to the apexes. Again, if you have to take your speed down in order to put rubber on curb, do that. Get comfortable with what that ideal line looks and feels like, and then start adding the pace in such a way that you don't compromise that line.
Yeah, I had a feeling that I'm generally very early into the corner.
Watch out.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing so much early. Your turn-in points are not that bad. But the way the car is positioned is a bit far off of the edge of the track, which is making the corner artificially sharper, right? It makes it artificially more difficult. So like right here, you're about a half car width. There you go. Much better. Put the wheels on the paint.
Oh, so it's before turning in and...
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I need to take some fuel, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the pits at the end of this, and then I'll come back out. If you want to keep going around, really focus on when you're lining up to hit the brakes, are your wheels as far over as they can safely be or not? And then same thing on exit. Where's the car ending up? Like, are you pretty far from the edge of the track? And for now, don't worry too much about making adjustments on that exit. Just be aware of what you're doing. Oh, yeah, I'm sputtering. Okay. Let me go get a drink here, I guess.
Nice timing.
Left side, clear left.
Watch your speed limit in the pits.
Thank you for taking your time to instruct me.
Of course, man.
I really appreciate it.
4, 3, 2, 1. Box now.
Let's grab in some fuel. I think this also plays into, at the top of the session, there's the question on how to learn a new track. This is basically what I'm going through, is establishing the line I want to take first, and then everything I do is keeping that line as my priority. Right? Every single thing I test is how far can I go without compromising that line. Right? How much more speed can I carry without compromising the exit? How much later can I brake without compromising apex, whatever?
Basically, too impatient for that. And I think that's
it can be
what I need to work on.
everybody just wants to go fast, but there's work to be done.
There is.
So you're about 30 seconds back there.
I went out and spent some money on a new wheel.
Oh yeah?
The feeling is definitely improved in that one.
Yeah, what'd you get?
I can much better feel the grip of the front end.
Sure.
I got the Fanatec Club Sport.
Ah, very nice.
And
watch your mirrors, there's a car approaching.
Oh, where'd you go?
On your left. Clear left.
Ah. I had my relatives scrolled all funny. I'm like, where'd everybody go? I just should have been right behind you. Okay, so let me go ahead and just catch up to you here.
I guess I'll take quite a moment. The lift off Oversteer really worked well in that corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a while to develop the muscle memory and honestly just the trust that the car is going to do what you expect.
Finding my way back onto the track.
That looked much better. Turn in was a little bit late there. You want to get your turn in just when the tarmac changes on the right, before that. Yeah, before that curb. And the idea is if you look at the camber and the elevation change on the apex, you're trying to put the car on the inside of the corner before it goes over that little hill, which you'll notice if you're looking for it, and keeping it within a car width of the curb, because there's a little bit of a crown in the road as well. Whatever you need to do to kind of, nestle the car in that little bit.
On your right. Clear right.
Come on.
I love being in VR, so I can look around.
Well, don't worry so much about being fast into the entry there. Worry about holding that line and maximizing your exit. In general, you'll hear me beat that drum a lot. Exit is the most important part of the corner for me. Anything I'm doing that's compromising either my exit position or speed needs to either be intentional or it's unacceptable, as far as I'm concerned. I don't do anything that's going to compromise that exit. So any adjustments that I'm making, either in my overall approach or dynamically based on racecraft, I'm thinking max exit velocity. Okay, really don't be scared to get up on the curbs and whatnot, right? Or put the wheels in the paint.
off
There
the
you go.
pace in sector 1.
How much does it actually cost to put your tires on the grass? If you don't go off track, is it
It's not too
slow
bad,
you down?
but you know, you lose traction, so if you try to turn or brake with the tires in the grass, you got problems. In some cases, if you're accelerating hard, it will cost you because of the open differential in the car. It'll just spin that wheel. But, you know, a little touch isn't that big of a deal. Typically.
Hello guys, sorry for interrupting.
Sure.
Are you guys interested in listening a little bit more about lift-off oversteer and what we can do with it and what is causing it and things like that?
I think that would be lovely.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're at a good spot here, so we'll jump back in a minute.
Thank you, Pete.
Yep, of course. So again, just really focus on, I think you have a general idea, just really focus on getting the wheels on the paint on the far edge of the course and get comfortable with that. And then focusing on that exit. I get the sense you're trying to feel as fast as you can, you know, during that braking and turn in. That's a distant second to having an ideal line and velocity on your exit. So look further through that corner and keep your eyes on what's going to happen to my exit if I make whatever decision at this point. If I push the gas more, what's that going to do to my exit? It's going to push me wide, right? If I brake later, what's that going to do to the exit? Is it going to kill my exit speed? And then, you know, using the whole amount of the track, I think you'll see some pretty rapid improvement.
Yeah, I'll try that. Thank you, Pete.
All right. Yep, of course.
Jumping to the other channel.
Okay.
Awesome.
Should take that in first, definitely.
Okay. What I want to talk about is a little bit of lift-off oversteer. For me, as an engineer, there is actually two types of off-throttle oversteer. The first one is the initial lift-off oversteer, and that is what we have been using now for initiate the turning in some corners, and then we put in or we steer first, put in the steering, and then we lift off the throttle and use the initial lift-off oversteer. But there is another oversteer that I think actually is causing you guys more problem, and that is when you are totally off throttle and you are coasting. You still have engine brake when that happens, and that means you actually are applying a slight brake force to the rear wheels, and that together with your other inputs, is what sometimes causing you problems. As an example, if you go in a straight line, for example, for T1 on this course, and you just lift the throttle, that initial lift of throttle is not causing you any problem, right? You'd barely feel that. It's not causing you any trouble at all. But if you applying brake, heavy braking, and you downshift like crazy, that braking force you have on the rear tires, because you are moving the weight to the front, meaning you're lightening up the rear tires, make them lighter, and together with all the other stuff you are doing, all of a sudden you can break the limit and you can get some really nasty things going on. So be aware of that you have actually already taken some of the grip away because you are applying slightly braking force to your tires. And you also, what happens is the braking force you get, or the engine brake you get, is stronger in the beginning because you have more RPM on the engine. The lower the RPM are, the lower the braking force are. So if you downshift very quickly in the beginning, that will also help you to upset the car. So
okay. One question while we're talking about shifting with the oversteer and the lifting. Now, when do you want to already be in the gear that you need before you lift and go into it, or can you work the gear as you're lifting? If you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get what you are trying to say, and I would say it depends on the corners and what you are using it for. So, for example, like we have done now, we are using the lift of oversteer to get the car to rotate more. If you downshift at that point as well, you get even more from that. So you can use that to initiate even more oversteer into the car if you want to.
Okay.
Some drivers do it, others don't. It depends on your driving style a little bit. I do that on some tracks. I downshift one gear and floor it through the corners. way before the apex.
Yeah, if you want an extreme example of that, I'd recommend watching Dennis Johansson drive. He's Race Driver 77 on Twitch. He has a very staccato style. He will always downshift. He's almost always taking corner entries like a gear down from everybody else. He really likes to use that engine braking. So that can be a very good concrete example of the differences in style that we're talking about here.
Okay.
So, and
Sector 3 is 2/10 off the pace. Your last lap time is 1:45.
when you are on off throttle or idle throttle, you have no throttle input whatsoever. Most of the shite that is going on with the car is, especially on oversteer, is picnic, as I call it. There is a problem in share, not in the car. It's your other inputs that is causing you trouble, because the braking force from the engine is not strong enough to upset the car enough to causing big issues, as long as you are not turning the car. If you are in a straight line and you are braking massively and downshifting like crazy, and you get oversteer from that, it's your inputs that is wrong. It's the same if you get oversteer mid-corner from lifting or being, lift off throttle. What I mean with that is the initial lifting. If you are lifting the throttle mid-corner, you are doing something wrong, because mid-corner, not every time, not in all corners, but most of the time, you should be starting getting back on throttle, not lifting.
1:44.40.
Okay, so if you're lifting at that mid-corner point, you're going into that corner way too hot, essentially.
Yeah, most of the time. And one thing to verify that is, if you are forced to lift, you're going in too hot. if you have a massive understeer, you're going
Sector
into
1's
hot.
quick.
So there is things that you can actually use to verify that this is wrong as well. So if you get mid-corner or corner exit oversteer from lifting, you are doing something way weird. And how can you recover from lift off oversteer? If that happens, how do you save that?
Usually I go into panic mode, I turn the wheel the opposite way, and I'm on the brake and the throttle to kick it back straight.
Okay.
If like I notice it's starting to really kick out, and I'm like, alright, shit, I've seen myself do this so many times, even in a race. Like I'll be running clean, comes down to 10th, 11th lap, and I'll pull that move, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I realized what I did. But I wind up slowing down so much because I'm on the two pedals to straighten it back out.
That lap was at
Okay.
144.30.
If I, based on what I say, that is causing that initial lift off oversteer or off throttle oversteer, it's engine brake. What would be the easiest way to deal with that then?
Downshift?
No, that makes it worse.
That makes it worse? Okay,
Yeah,
so then you wanna... I don't know.
Get back on throttle.
Just get back on the throttle?
Yeah, but not full throttle. You only need to apply just as much throttle so you get even with the braking force and taking the braking force away.
Okay.
And that could be, depending on your speed and RPM and things like that, that could be everything from maybe 5, 10, 15% throttle up to maybe 20, 25, 30%. So it's not much, but it may be a little bit more than you actually think it should be. So play around with it, try it, be aware that one way to deal with that oversteer is actually getting back on throttle again, but very gentle.
Okay. Yeah, when I start feeling myself do that instead of doing my normal panic move, I'll try that.
Sector 3 times quick. That was at 143.82.
What else do we have? If you get, as I said, off throttle oversteer or issues, especially when you are braking in a straight line, most of the time it is not the off throttle that is causing that, is the other inputs you are doing, but together with the braking force on the rear wheel, it will push you over the limits. So what can we do to reduce that so it doesn't happen? One should actually be quite obvious. I thought you would say that, guys, but obviously not. Brake less earlier, because you already have braking force on the rear tires.
So just apply a little bit extra to it?
Either you are braking less with the pedal, and that most of the time means you need to brake slightly earlier. Or another way to deal with it is you're actually braking more at the braking. You brake more or less as hard as you can. Try to slow the car down as much as possible in the initial braking, And after that, when you're coming down in speed, you start the downshift. So you downshift after the initial braking to take some of that nasty braking on the rear away a little bit, because it will be worse with higher RPM on the engine. The other things you can do is obviously go downshift at the lower RPM and not as fast as some of the guys are doing. They are slamming through the gear as fast as possible in the beginning. I'm not saying it's wrong. It could be that it suits the driving style, so they use that to turn the car. It's up to you to try it out and see what suits you. It's just different way of doing different thing and dealing with different stuff.
Okay. Yeah, because with what you just said, like I've seen Pete do that when I go into his streams and everything. How he'll be up there saying 5th gear and he cuts the gears down real quick, and he's into the turn and flying out of it. And then I try to replicate that, and my ass is in a wall flipped over 18 times.
Yeah.
So another ingredient in there that really plays, and you can practice it on this track, where Marcus was talking about using that engine braking and how that can impact your stability for better or worse. On the right hairpin here, and all the hairpins, all 3 hairpins, play around with the blipping versus no blipping as you're downshifting through that corner. You'll find I'm coming up to the hairpin right now. As you're coming down that 432, that last shift down into first, you're going to notice the rear end of the car will start to come around on you if you want it to. Now, if you wanted a more pronounced reaction from that, don't blip, just downshift, and you'll get quite a lot of oversteer induced from that input brake, because it's like gently stabbing the brakes just on the rear wheels. Whereas if you want it to be more controlled, you don't want it to be quite so violent, you can just blip, and then it's more like gently getting on the brakes.
Yeah. I was coming to that as well. But yeah, it's just a different way of doing things depending on if you want more or less of that oversteer. If you want more, be a little bit more aggressive with your driving. If you want less, be a little bit more conservative with your driving inputs. More or less.
When I'm driving this Skippy, I think of the downshift with no blip as a handbrake.
It is a little like gently dragging a hydraulic handbrake. That's rear wheels only. And I think, we had a little bit of conversation about that, about, what gear's faster last week.
Yeah.
Talking through interlagos, like I tend to prefer first gear in a T1 and, what is that? T7 after, that big sweeping right. A lot of people like to take second. I like first because I like the engine braking. I like that I can control it more with my right foot than my left foot. But they're both valid. It's just driving style.
Yeah.
Yellow flag, keep your wits about you, mate.
It is. One other thing we talked a little bit about oversteer. We have talked most about the lift off or off throttle oversteer. Another thing that we actually haven't talked about at all is on throttle oversteer. And it's quite easy actually. You get oversteer when you're back on throttle. So how do you deal with it?
Go off throttle.
Yeah, go off throttle. That is the easiest way to deal with that. And
So if you're feeling
Times
understeer
faster,
while
that
on the
was,
throttle, just lift off the
144.29.
throttle.
So important caveat to that, partially go off throttle. If you jump all the way off throttle, that's how you would, that's one way to induce a drift when you want to induce it on purpose. You don't want the weight to come slamming forward when the rear's already got less traction than the front. You're trying to neutralize the car. You don't want to slam it the other direction.
But it's unlikely to skip it, right? Because it's underpowered.
On cold tires, it's going to be extremely applicable.
Yeah, on cold tires.
And so far, it's been very applicable in the last turn for me.
Yeah, it's coming down to driving style and things like that. Because the Skippy, if you learn the car and understand the car a little bit more, you can actually do whatever you want in this car. If you want to drift it, you can do it. If you want to get on throttle oversteer, you can do that and things like that. It's a great car for learning car control because you can do everything in this car if you really want to.
Yeah, and not kidding, go watch the fast guys qualify the car, because they are going to intentionally induce extreme oversteer and understeer to force heat into the front and rear in about equal proportions. So we'll intentionally scrub the hell out of the fronts and hang the rear end out on throttle on those cold tires to try to get some heat in.
Sector 3 times okay. That lap was at 144.58.
Yeah. And then we talked a little bit about it for throttle oversteer, but that will most of the time hopefully happen on corner exit, that you are getting back on throttle a little bit too aggressive or a little bit too much. So what can you do to deal with that? Because you don't want to get off throttle if you're not forced to it. Can you do something else to deal with that?
You can brake, or you just apply the throttle slower and slam it.
Yeah. Be more gentle with the throttle when you go back on it. Or check your steering input. See if you can unlock the steering wheel a little bit so you get a more shallow line. Could help, so you can actually keep the throttle on. And if you still get that problem on throttle more or less all the time, I would adjust my apex, because your exit point is probably not correct.
143.69.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed trying to judge an apex, where I'm turning in at. So I noticed sometimes I get it perfect, but then other times it's like I thought I was on it, but I can tell I was just off of that apex point.
Yeah. So, I don't know if there is something more you want to say, Pete, about oversteer and stuff like that.
No, I think we've well covered it. You definitely hit some gaps I didn't think of. So I would add a few things to the homework, things that you're looking at for Mosport. Go ahead and practice, in addition to the liftoff oversteer, go ahead and practice downshifting with and without a blip in the middle of a corner, right? Get used to what that feels like. Get used to being able to use that as a tool. If you find you've got an understeer condition and you don't want to hit the brakes, get used to having that in a toolbox. Understand how the car is going to respond to you. And then, you know, in your qualifying, yeah, go ahead and try and, or your cold tires runs, which you will do a bunch of cold tires practice before signing up to do qualifying, right? Because everybody's thorough and diligent. So while you're doing those, yeah, play around with that on-throttle oversteer. Try and induce it on purpose. right? So in your opening laps, going down the straight, try and weave around the track a little bit. See if you can get it to oversteer exactly how much you want it, right? While in control, get used to what it feels like when that car starts going sideways and what it wants from you to bring it back. So you can use it as a tool instead of just something to avoid.
And I also think, I don't know what about you, Larry, but I think we are coming back to more car control later on, and I think then we should talk about how can you use your input to correct mistakes. Okay. Yeah, because you can do so much more if you have all the tools in your toolbox. You are not forced to, for example, unwind the steering all the time to get rid of oversteer or understeer. You can use other inputs to deal with them if you want to. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why people are thinking, like we talked about earlier, about you steering in the wrong direction. It doesn't feel natural to counter steer to deal with an oversteer or things like that. So I think we're going to need to talk about a little bit more about how can you use them to correct your mistakes.
I think there's some basics we've discussed here, which I think Annie unfortunately missed out. One of her biggest issues is blipping. She doesn't blip at all. So that's why you see her flap the pedals on the steering wheel so much. Because sometimes you have to blip to get it down in gear, right?
Yeah.
If you're too slow.
Sector 1 time is good.
Or too fast, sorry. Whatever. I've got it wrong around. But so I think that is something we need to think about a little bit about. I need to think for a bit of homework to learn to blip naturally rather than thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's car control as well, so we can talk more about that as well and practice it maybe a bit more.
Because I've told that she should blip, but she just doesn't. And that when you just see her go clack 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 gears until the RPM's all right, but it slips in. That's why she overshifts so many times on last night's races. She overshifts because she anticipates she's going to shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I would recommend just playing with downshifts in your throttle oversteer drills this week. Get used to downshifting before doing turning, and then also, mid corner. Just see what the car does. Get used to the car doing what it's inclined to do and how you can use that to your advantage, right? And go into that drill with the expectation that you're going to loop the car because you're intentionally trying to force it beyond its comfort zone and your comfort zone, and it's going to be awkward and unintuitive and unnatural, so let it be unnatural, right? Experiment, play with it.
So, Pete, the inverse of that as well, there's tracks where I short shift mid-corner.
Sure.
Because that helps me rotate the car as well, because the weight, and then I get the shift and the lift to get the it's as if the car turns in better when I do that.
Yeah, so it's unlikely to be what you're doing when you're short shifting is you're kind of forcing yourself to let off the throttle, more or less. You're requesting less torque. You could do the same thing, just lifting off the throttle, right? All you're doing is you're torque limiting yourself, which in some cases is the way to go. Like, if the rear end's spinning out of control, it's not really responding to throttle. Yeah, maybe that short shift to calm down both the engine braking and the amount of torque that's going to be applied when you get back on throttle is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing is save myself coming out of that last turn because I've been overcooking and trying to get the brakeless turn in. And when I realize I don't have it, I just drop it in a second. And I catch the car.
Yeah.
Now, should I run auto blip? Should I be running something else?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, you're going, Marcus.
Okay, guys, I'm back
I
on.
recommend
Had to switch over to push to
you are
talk.
using the
I don't think I've got many in here, but
clutch.
Okay.
Just the same.
So go on and practice with that.
Yeah, and getting used to downshift with blip. And
Now, blip is that's when you're lifting off the pedal, downshift, and getting back on it. Or
yep, that's correct.
When you upshift, you lift the throttle. You get off the throttle slightly. You don't need to get completely off throttle. Just a slightly lift, and then you can upshift. When you downshift, to get rid of some of that braking force that we talked about, so you prevent the rear wheels to lock up, you blip, you get back on throttle a little bit, so you rev up the engine a little bit, and that is a very short stamp on the throttle.
Okay. Sometimes it's very similar to rev matching.
Yeah, it
not
is
exactly the same thing. Okay.
It is exactly the same thing, but people refer to it as a blip. And you use that for downshifting to prevent the rear tires from locking up.
It takes quite a bit of time to get used to shifting without the clutch. Other people use the clutch to shift, upshift, and blip to downshift. So it will take quite a bit of practice, but it will take a lot of time because I think there's kind of a penalty for using auto blip. So your lap times will once you've got that under control, will improve quite a bit.
Plus, you can't decide not to blip if you've got auto blip on.
That's the big thing for me, because auto blip mostly comes into play.
You don't need to blip. Yeah, but there is, as Larry said, it is a time delay to it. I don't know how much it is these days, but back in the days when I was using it, it was roughly 0.3 seconds on a 1.5 minute track.
Yeah, so I personally, I don't see too much on the downshift.
Hesitating when you upshift and downshift. It's asking you first, should I? And then it does it. So,
So you're saying if you don't have a clutch pedal, does the auto clutch work fine for that? Just taking off auto blip?
I used the button for the clutch when I had that.
So the thing with auto blip is it applies when downshifting, right? It's smoothing out your downshifts. There isn't a huge actual tangible time penalty there because it's not really impacting your ability to slow down the car, right? While you're downshifting, what you lose, and Jake hit on it, is you lose the option to more abruptly do that downshift and induce that extra oversteer if you're in trouble, you're understeering, and you need to get the rear to come around. That's one less option you've got in your toolbox.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I recommend to use the anti-stall, and if you don't have the clutch, map a button on your steering wheel so you can use it for when you start the race, because you actually don't need to use the clutch in the Skippy more than when you start the race.
Yeah, I use it for mine, but it's even arguably faster to use just lift to shift. But on like the order of a few hundredths, it really doesn't matter too much. That's preference, but yeah, just being able to have it for that downshift, smoothing out the downshift is huge.
Yeah, it is. So yeah.
Well,
thanks, Flybright. I'm glad you like it.
Practice this week.
If you want to be able to jump into these, this is just jump into the Snail Racing Discord. I've got it on my about profile there.
Right, how much time have you got left? There's 56 seconds remaining.
Yeah.
It's like we planned the session, right?
All right, guys.
It's almost like that, yeah.
Hey, watch it. We might actually get professional.
No, it's a really good session. I learned a lot. Thanks, guys.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
was
Anything
awesome.
interesting, Leth?
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks a bunch. Yeah.
And I
Thanks,
shall
Pete.
see y'all
Yep.
tomorrow night
And,
for the race.
As always, we're trying out a little bit more structured format this season. Any feedback, if you're uncomfortable leaving it in the Discord, feel free to reach out to any of us directly. We're happy to provide that feedback confidentially. If there's something that you would like to see that was better and should be done more of, or not so good, and we should take a look at it. And any other follow-up questions, feel free to grab, me, Walter, Charles, whoever you prefer. And we're happy to work with you.
Pete. It was very interactive. It was my first, and I really liked it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Cedric.
Thanks.
So next week's is practice our skills. So we're trying to give the coaches a bit of time off as well. So I don't know. It's up to you guys, coaches, if you want to do anything special. But it's Watkins Glen, and I was just going to do follow the leader and side by
I was just
side.
asking what kind of paints you were doing.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem, Bruce.
I probably, depending on my kid next weekend.
The Race to Learn sessions?
Session
just explaining that that's through Snail Racing?
around, because I like Watkins Glen.
Okay, cool.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
Very
It's
nice.
just we're trying to give a week or two every second week.
Still messing with the skeletal structure and all that?
Preparation and maybe making videos or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And creating material, whatever we want to do for RaceToLearn. So next weekend's one of those. So that will be just drills, pretty much. So we can do some of these drills as well. And I'll publish the format in the week that we can.
Did you guys do track guide on Watkins Glen last season?
I can't remember if we did one.
The setup I had shared against him, but I'm happy to throw that up on the Discord as well.
Yeah, it's new to the rotation here.
Yeah, it wasn't in the schedule last season, so it's a new track for this season.
It's changing the overall stature of the thing. Cool.
Yeah, I'll have a look at if there's a free guide that I'll share with you guys then.
Yeah.
Somewhere there will be one. I've done Watkins Glens before, so I assumed it was done last season. So apologies for that. I must have raced it in a different season.
Yeah. No worries. There is guides to it in the forums for Watkins. So
I imagine Evans is going to do one as well. I give him shit because I'm honor bound to. But he did a good job on his last lap guide, Ben Evs, on Twitch and YouTube. I think I would expect he's probably going to do another one if you don't have VRS or what have you.
Yeah, I think there's a guy on the forums that posts a track guide every week as well. I've never watched them. I don't know how good they are, so I'll go do a bit of research.
Yeah, James did some for a while, but he kind of tapered off, unfortunately. And then I think Borja also does a few.
Yeah, it's Borja I'm thinking of, yeah.
And there is another guy, I can't remember the name of it, but he has been doing track guides for, what is it, at least the last 2, 3, 4 seasons, I think. So more or less all the tracks should be in there.
Maybe we should just put together a compendium of the existing guides from everywhere and throw that up on the channel for folks.
I'll put it on the website next to the schedule. I'll put the lap guides in there.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'll do that. I'll do it this week. I'll let you guys know when it's done.
Yeah, awesome.
Is that okay?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
All right, well, you guys have a good night.
Here you go.
Right, catch you later.
Good stuff. Y'all take care.
Okay, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I suppose I could take a screenshot of that too, huh? Capture it? Of course it didn't. God damn it. Let's see. There we go. Okay, got it. Huzzah!
I was a little bit unprepared, or not unprepared to be honest, because
Yeah, Flat Ray, I was just thinking like it's weird that nobody's done
a
that.
shitload of things for the
There's so many out there, nobody actually
Oversteer
aggregates them.
But was it easy to follow, or was it a little bit too technical, Pete?
I don't know, right? I think we have to see what the reactions are. I don't know the answer to that question for myself either. I thought the content was good. You know, we'll see. Yeah, Ben did a pretty good one. I think he does a pretty good job. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to jump off. That's a good session. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
We'll catch up. We'll catch up in the Discord.
Okay, awesome.
All right, guys, I'm going to cut this one off here. Don't know if I'm going to be back on tonight or not, but definitely tomorrow for Sunday Night Skippy. Again, oh, don't tell me you just like rated or some shit. Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm going to be back for Sunday Night Skippy tomorrow night. Qualifying starts at 8 p.m. Central, and I believe Green Flag is 8:15. And then that is a 40-minute race with a mandatory pit stop. I think we might be moving to 2 mandatory pit stops. And so that can make for some interesting strategery. We've got, a huge range of skill range and drivers, a lot of the usual suspects from, the front pack, the top split Skippy on down to folks that are, getting by on their first couple months trying to do some skills development. So it's a very diverse group. 42 cars on the grid on some of these smaller tracks, more technical tracks. It's definitely tends not to be very dull. So should be a good time. So worst case scenario, we'll see you then. Otherwise, we might be back on a little bit later tonight. We'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks, everyone.